Well, I'm here primarily for Heel-o-Matic for this half hour. So I've had a Heel-o-Matic for quite a while. I rope it a lot. In fact, I would probably challenge any of the Heel-o-Matic guys that I rope my Heel-o-Matic more than anybody. I mean, and my wife, she pulls it for me every day. And I ride 5 horses a day on it. I'll probably run 10 runs on each horse, so I get 50 runs a day. That's really more, that's a better practice for me, generally, unless I'm roping with a guy like Joel or like Turtle that's going to turn me a bunch of really good, high-quality steers, and I'm able to rope good steers, you know, on the fresher end where they all hit the end. It's a true good go, and I get good practice out of it. But the Heel-o-Matic gives me a good run every time because I get the same thing. I get to set it up the speed that I want to go. I get pretty much the handle that I'm wanting to set up, and I can work each one of my horses according to what they need for that day, whether they need to go slower, be slowed down, or they needed to be speeded up. And then when I'm riding just a practice horse that's primarily for me just to get a lot of runs, then I'm able to just get practice for myself. So I put my Heel-o-Matic, I have a ground-driven machine, and there's 3 settings on it. There's a slow and a medium and a fast, and mine's primarily in the middle on the medium. So when my wife takes it about, slow for me is about 15 miles an hour. That's where your horse he's just kind of in a medium lope. And my arena's pretty long. I got a 350-foot arena, 150-foot wide. And I make one pass down the arena, and then I coil up, and then I make a run coming back. And I go almost to the end on my pattern and turn it. And then she works her way up the arena. My ground is fluffed up about, it's probably 4 inches deep or so. So after you make a couple of runs in the same tracks, it starts to dig out your ground. So then she works her way back as we go, and so that it's staying on primarily fresh ground where you turn it. And the high speed that I go is probably 20. And that's clipping pretty good, or a little over 20, 21, 22 miles an hour. And what I try to do when I'm going fast is I let my wife get going down the arena, and I'll let it get out away from me pretty good. Probably from here, as far away as from here to that hat arena sign right there. And that way I can get some speed built up. And I kind of gauge it to where I'm going to get to the steer or get to the dummy just as my wife's starting to make the corner and set up the corner. So what that does is that's just like I'm roping pretty much a fresh, hard running steer, and my horse is going wide open, and then he has to react to the corner, and he's got to learn his footwork and shut down and not get too close. Because what I like to do, I'm practicing to set up for live competitive runs. So I don't ever really want to end up getting anywhere into the corner. I don't want to end up getting right here next to the steer. Number one, if I'm too close, I can't see him very good. I can't see his legs or what he's doing. Number two, if I can't throw right here next to me, I'm going to get my horse in the loop that I throw. So if I do end up making a mistake and I get too close, then I got to wait for the steer to jump out away from me. Now the steer's leaving me and my horse has lost his momentum because he's not traveling with the steer. So I try to keep a little bit of a pocket as I'm coming in, which is just basically to say that I'm going to keep some distance between me and the steer through the turn. So if I'm setting it up where I'm really rolling coming down the arena and my horse is wide open, then he has to learn to come off and react to the corner of the steer. And right about here, he has to start shutting down, and he has to learn his footwork where he shortens his stride, he comes off, he drops his butt, and he comes off the steer, and he sets me basically right in this distance, and then stays right there through the turn. And as the steer squares up, when the steer squares up, I'm ready to take my shot and heel him if I'm in time with the steer. So the legs are going pretty fast, the steer's going pretty fast, and it's a realistic run for me. And the cool thing about the Heel-o-Matic as well is they've designed it where you can dally and pull back pretty much as hard as you want to. Your driver obviously has to know the timing of that, or you can I've never thrown my wife off though. But another thing I like about the Heel-o-Matic is the look to it and the presentation that it shows me in the hop design, because it looks just like a steer hopping. The legs look just like a steer. They're shaped just like a steer. The hind end comes up because a lot of times you get a reading. I first learned when I was a little kid roping to watch the timing of the steer basically from the body or the hind end of the steer, watching the hips come up. When I first realized that there was timing involved in getting my loop in there when the steer come off the ground, that was the vulnerable time to rope the steer, and therefore my percentages would go way up. It's just like jumping a rope. If I can time getting the loop under his feet when they clear the ground, then I can put him right in the loop off of that timing. So the live look of a steer is important. Even in a header, how he turns a steer, the presentation of what he does in the corner, everything is visual. So what you're reacting to is where the steer's going, what the steer looks like as he's traveling into the corner, and that tells you when he's going to be ropeable and when to take your shot. So the Heel-o-Matic, I mean, it provides basically the closest look of a live steer. The legs, whenever you rope the steer, it feels lifelike, just like you're roping a real steer. It holds on the legs good, and when you dally, it basically comes together right here at the hocks, just like it would a real steer. So another thing is I enjoy roping it. Now I rope a dummy. I basically go through a routine, and I rope a dummy. There's a dummy in my barn on the ground, and in the morning after I get done feeding, I'll usually throw 20 or 30 loops on a dummy on the ground. I just like to throw loops, and then I rope the Heel-o-Matic pretty much every day that I'm not going to rope live cattle. I do like roping live cattle, but if I rope too many live steers on my horses, it seems to sour them. But that's another unique thing about roping the Heel-o-Matic, is that they don't get soured. And I don't put the box into the equation. Like I said, I just start out just in front of the boxes, and when I start, I'll usually start my wife will turn left because I've roped it as she's turned and come across the arena. So then she stops when I dally. So then I build up, make me a circle, then I'm pointing this way again, and then she turns and starts to go. So then I take my horse and I start in a circle, and I come to the right side and then let her start going, and that way I can start my horse in the left lead when I start my run. That way I'm not starting straight where my horse is going to break in his right lead. Now if he does, every now and then a horse will switch into the right lead coming down the arena. Some people get after their horse when they do that because they just want them in the left lead all the time. I generally don't, because anytime, if you draw a live steer at a rodeo or a roping and he happens to come out and step to the right, your horse generally is going to step into his right lead. Then when you get to the corner, that horse has to break over and break into his left lead to turn the corner. So I don't get after my horse if he does break in the right lead or switch into his right lead. I just roll him down the arena and I just go through the run just like it's a real run and make him naturally break over into the left lead like he's going to have to do on a live run. The less you get after your horses and just allow them to work through putting them in good routines and good patterns, the better. Because the thing that you battle with your horses is them not getting sour and not enjoying or liking what you're going to do with them. So, and another thing that is back to the control part of it, I can control what I'm doing with my horse. So a lot of times you can't do that in a live cattle situation unless you just have the perfect steers. Like for instance, if I got a horse that needs to be slowed down a little bit, because we take them to jackpots, and the jackpots that we go to are generally fast steers, fresher steers, because they like to bring the fresh steers to the open roping guys, and we basically break them in for the lower number ropers that are coming through the week. And so for our horses, when we go compete on them, they get racy and hyped up because they're used to going fast. So it's good to bring them back home and slow them down. Well, your cattle have to be just right if you have live cattle to where you've got just the right amount of speed to get done what you want on live steers. Or have a header that's going to basically do just exactly what you need them to do for you. And that's hard to set up as well, because a header that comes over, he might be limited on what he's riding that he can do, what his horse is going to allow him to do, or what he's needing to do in his practice. So if he's only got a couple of horses to ride, then you're only going to get a certain amount of spins that day or turns for you, and then he doesn't get to practice what he needs to practice. So that's where the Heel-o-Matic again comes in. And if I got a horse that I need to slow down, then I can go exactly, I can tell my wife, okay, I need to go 15 miles an hour on this horse. And then when I get there, when I get up to the steer going down the arena, I need you to slow down to 10 so that I can back him off and slow him down. Then I want you to speed up, then I want you to slow down. And really, with our horses, what are we trying to do? We're speeding them up and slowing them down, speeding them up and slowing them down. Because to have a horse that operates correctly, he has to be controllable. You got to be able to speed him up without getting out of control, because once you get to a situation where you got to pick him back up, or a part of the run where you got to pick him back up and get him under control, then he has to respond to that. So I can do all of those things with the Heel-o-Matic. Is there any questions? Go ahead.
Talk about what kind of corner you want to
You know, I have it depends on what kind of four-wheeler you have. If you've got a shifting four-wheeler, you kind of are limited on what you can do. I have an automatic, which you can basically roll it right over if you're not careful, because you can keep the gas right on it. To keep it moving through the turn right, you know, I like the automatic one, but I don't want it to be too rounded to where the horse doesn't have to react to just a little bit of sling, and so, you know, I like to go into it and make it as realistic as possible. But like my wife, she is the most awesome driver. I mean, she really is. And so what you teach the person that's driving it to do makes all the difference. And so I guess that's a challenge, you know, as far as, but I'm just very blessed that my wife, she doesn't mind driving it for me. I've got to give her some runs too, so I drive it for her while she heads it. So, you know, when you're going down the arena 20 miles an hour, and then take that corner basically as fast as you can and still be safe without rolling everything over. And after you've driven it quite a bit, I've driven it by doing lots of schools, and I like to drive the four-wheeler with the students so that I can set up what I'm doing for them. And there's a certain speed that you have to come down to make, you know, a safe turn without rolling it over, but you want to kind of hit the limit of that to make it realistic. So that's what, as far as answering your question in a long way, kind of test the limits of how far you can go with your driver. Go ahead. You basically got yeah, and walking them in and out while you trip the gate and let the steers go. You know, guys do that. I've done that quite a bit, just to where they know that they don't have to just break and run. Another thing, if you're roping a lot of live cattle, the way I kind of get around that is I don't let my horses break real hard every time practicing on them. I kind of coast them out, and then wait till you kind of get out in the arena till you let them gradually build up their speed. And then I don't like getting to a steer early, getting to a spot, and then having to pull off and wait. So I kind of like breaking more gradual, building up speed more gradual, and then judging just when the header goes to make his move and get to your corner just on time so that you can keep that distance between your steer and you in the corner, and you can keep everything moving in a forward motion. You can keep your body in the right, straight up and down, your left hand holding your horse and framing him into the turn, and keep everything just moving forward if you get there just on time. And so you take a little of that anxiety out of your horse, But a lot of people see they'll just break with the steer and say, well, the first 3 strides, get going as fast as you can go. Well, that just builds anxiety in your horse from the start. I do. It depends on how short they are or how stoppy they are. It just depends on the horse. If your horse tends to be a little on the free side, then you'd want to keep him sharp in his stop. So you'd probably want to take your first throw, set him down, but if your horse is a little on the short side, right. Yeah. I would just look at him as he's sitting in the chute, just lock in to whatever you can see on his right side there, like his right flank or his right thigh, just above the hock, whatever you can see on that right side, and just zero in on that and just follow it the whole time. That's what I have to do, because it seemed like when I first started getting pretty good at heeling at a young age, I really focused on the legs, or on the right leg. And then through time, I guess rodeo, and I found I hit a stretch there where I watched the head of the steer and watched the head rope go on. And then in the last 5 or 6 years, I switched back to just locking in on his right leg again, just to get my concentration down there again. So that's what I would suggest. Coming down the arena, or I like to be, well, like I said, everything to me is approach. So I don't really get to a spot and then maintain that, because I mean the majority of even the jackpots that we go to, your header is almost getting there before you, and he's roping coming in, and everything's so snappy and so fast that you're just basically getting up to that good position, which to me, you don't really want to get any higher unless you're trying to just first hop one as fast as you can. You don't want to get any higher than nose to tail, because what that does is it opens up the inside of the steer, because you always want to get to the inside just a little bit. So if you get past that hip and that steer turns, your horse has no path to get in there. The higher you get, the more of a shutdown corner that he has to make, and you lose the momentum to travel with the steer through the turn. I want to step out just a little bit. Where you're sitting in the box is just a little narrow. So what I like to do, like at a jackpot or something, where you're going to run down to the middle of the arena, or third of the arena at least, is when you clear the mouth of the box, you're just going to step out just a little bit and widen yourself. And what it feels like to me is it puts you about 2 strides from the steer. So if I'm coming down the arena, I want to be right about here. So it's about, as that steer starts to break, it's about 2 strides, 1 stride here, 1 stride here, and I end up just on the inside and traveling with the steer through the turn. So if you're a little too narrow, if you just stayed the same width, then you have a tendency to get cut in a little bit too deep. A little bit wider angle lets you see them a little better out away from you. That's another thing about distance, is just being able to see what they're doing through the turn. The more narrow you are and you start to turn across them, then your horse's neck gets in the way and it covers them up right there.
On the dally part of it, is it possible to pull your slack like this and be able to
It tends to come off. So, and you don't really, like heading is pulling it tight. Heeling is just lifting it up because everything's leaving you, and it's coming tight. Everything's coming tight. So I don't want to pull my slack. I just want to lift it while and then immediately everything starts to come tight, and then the timing of going to the horn, to where you just get around the horn as everything's sucking tight right there. But you don't really have to pull it, just lift it. But if you pull down, if your loop comes around and comes up like it's supposed to, and then you pull it down, it's just gonna drop, right?
And you thought you wouldn't go 30 minutes, right?
Hey, it went fast.
It did. Ladies and gentlemen, give a hand for Clay O'Brien Cooper right here. What a treat.